And on an all-new set, we welcome in Sam McClure too, because Chief Football Reporter of Footy Classified and reporter in the Nine Families. We welcome you in. Mayhem in the fixture. What's going to happen and how do we make sense of it?
Yeah, I think mayhem is the appropriate word, Hutchie. Good evening, everyone. As we go to air tonight, we can tell you that the AFL is working feverishly behind the scenes to create mini hubs all across the country. Now, we know that Geelong and Collingwood in a couple of weeks will do that in Western Australia, but with the exemptions, the new exemptions in Queensland announced today, that simply won't be enough. We're going to have teams, I believe, 2 at a time, in about 2 weeks, move to different parts of the country, New South Wales, Queensland, potentially even the Northern Territory or the ACT. Travis Old, the fixture boss, he confirmed that story on Sports Day a little earlier.
Victorian teams, if they go directly into Queensland, they need to quarantine for 14 days. They can play each other during that time. If they come via another state, in this case probably most likely New South Wales, then that counts as part of that quarantine time. And so it makes sense that we might get a couple of Victorian teams into Sydney. There's certainly an opportunity to do something similar in South Australia after the 20th of July when their borders open. And so we just need to think about how we rejig the movement of teams sort of between states beyond this week.
It is a pretty drastic change, Hutchie. It's going to make it particularly difficult for the Victorian sides.
Well, it is, but I think the writing's on the wall in Victoria. You've got to get out. I mean, with the transmissions today and so many community cases, we saw Melbourne Storm jump earlier. They clearly saw the writing on the wall, and it would make sense for the AFL to get as many of the Victorian teams as is possible out and hubbed in other parts of the country, Lotto.
Yeah, I think every club pretty much in the last 24 hours has just realised that to get a season done, Kane, you just have to be willing to do anything. And I know that 4 weeks ago you would have been saying, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. Now, to get our season and all these, 118 games, Sam, to go, we just need to do anything for the sake of the game.
And the attitude's going to be all important. Yeah. The way that these teams embrace it from the top down, we've seen the way that Ken Hinkley and Port Adelaide have embraced it. That's filtered through the group. So the teams that do and the teams that are prepared to go the extra yard will be right up there again this year.
That was interesting concession there from Travis about perhaps going home by another state could be part of the quarantine. We in essence there's a travel bubble for footy that Victoria won't be in. Have a think about that.
So what does it mean?
Free trade among the other states, and it's going to be awfully hard for a Victorian team to win this premiership.
So what does it mean for the grand final? Hutch, we spoke about it last week. Lordy and I were in agreement that if there's no crowd at the MCG, it's better move to Adelaide Oval or to Perth. Is it a given in your mind that the grand final will be played at the MCG?
No, but it's a long way away. And we're going to see changing circumstances in all states. Victoria's wearing the brunt of it at the moment. The rest of the country is not immune from this. But you look at how this works out, and it is lopsided, and let's just all accept, my belief is let's just accept it and get on with it. We're so lucky to be playing footy at all. But you look at how this swings in the favour of the national teams, or the interstate teams as we call them here in Melbourne. Lord Owen, you look at the Queensland teams, they don't have to go to WA or South Australia because they've already played them at home. They may have less or no trips to Melbourne. In the Swans and Giants, they may get to play some of those Victorian teams in Sydney. For West Coast and Fremantle, they might get anywhere. It's not insurmountable. They play every game or most games in the West from round 7 onwards. They're certainly going to play 6-ish in a row. And then South Australia obviously don't have to go back to Queensland and don't have to go to a WA, so tick those games off, and they may not get into Melbourne. So that's a lot of games in your own neighbourhood.
And I think that's where Port Adelaide are in a wonderful position because they've banked some wins. And I think West Coast, they might have sort of maybe dodged a bullet this week. They got Richmond v West Coast was meant to be the clash. Now it's going to be West Coast v the Sydney Swans. So this is one before they head home to Perth. They've got to try and bank a win, Hutchie, while they're here. And I'm a bit concerned for the Gold Coast. As good as they're going, they've got, obviously, we'll see how the change to the fixture. The Gold Coast Suns will play Geelong as they were meant to be, but then they'll play another game in Melbourne and then likely 2 in Sydney, Hutchie, so it might get tricky. But here are the changes, Sam, and who do you think wins out of it and who gets affected?
Well, I think West Coast avoiding Richmond, to your point, one of the big winners. Carlton and St Kilda moving to prime time is a win for both those clubs, given that the Saints in the first 4 weeks didn't have any prime time footy. It's going to affect some injuries, though, with the likes of Zach Jones and Harry Mackay. But on Lloydie's point...
And 3 days' notice to get up for Thursday night, which is a sign of the times. And you'd think, sorry to interrupt you there, you'd think the week after they're going to have to flip it again. Like the Victorian teams are going to have to play each other on scale the week after before they leave the state.
The other concession from the AFL tonight is that the fixture will now be redone on a week-to-week basis. I mean, actually, it's funny, we've spent years asking for a floating fixture. We now have one, obviously in very different circumstances.
I thought it was great, calm leadership from the CEO of the AFL, Gil McLachlan, today, who told everyone these things were going to happen.
We have time, I know that. We've got flexibility. We've got, as I said, 118 games to get away. We can compress, we can move, we can, if we need to, have a bye to reset. we can, I don't think we need, as I look ahead, I don't think we need to do that, but we've got options.